We are wrestling.
Olympic hero Kurt Angle, and you're listening to the We Are Wrestling Podcast. We Are Wrestling Podcast.
Hey everybody, Eric Bischoff here, and you are listening to We Are Wrestling Podcast.
If you're watching, We Are Wrestling.
I'm the host with the most.
You are by far the least intelligent.
Stay tuned, listen to the podcast. Best one, Donnie, might teach you a thing or two.
What is going on, We Are Wrestling Maniacs Worldwide? Ben here, one half of the We Are Wrestling Podcast.
If you ain't listening to the We Are Wrestling Podcast, bro, you're missing out. The king listens, and you need to too, bro.
Ricky knows best, ladies and gentlemen. Ricky knows best. Believe in me. God bless you.
We Are Wrestling Podcast.
We are wrestling.
What is up? We are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide. I'm the host with the most, Mr. We Are Wrestling himself, the best one, Donnie, here with...
What is going on, We Are Wrestling Maniacs Worldwide? It is your favorite uncle, Uncle Ben, America's favorite uncle. Wrestling's punching bag, Rage Circus, and the King of the Heathens. What is going on, everybody? We have a stacked fucking show for you guys, and it's definitely out of the norm. But before we get into all that mumbo-jumbo, Donnie, take it away, bud.
This is a very big episode because normally when it comes to wrestling documentaries, we like to do extras because we usually have a normal format when it comes to the podcast, but Netflix dropped a massive documentary on one of the most controversial wrestling figures in the business, and that is Vince McMahon. And we figured instead of doing an extra, and we have WWE Bad Blood coming out tomorrow as we're recording this podcast. We figured, why not just do all the AEW news on an extra? Ricky and I, we got that covered. And myself and Ben, we can do a whole We Are Wrestling Podcast episode on the Vince McMahon documentary. But before we get into it, because we're really going to be diving deep into all the episodes and just our thoughts on everything, we are ready. We got our guns loaded. If you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already and you're listening to this special We Are Wrestling Podcast episode, give us a 5-star review, not just any review, a best one review, and download the episode. Give us a follow, give us 5 stars, you already know. But if you're not We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, over on the YouTube channel, where we give you guys the best pro wrestling content for free. Free.
Yeah.
We have live watch-alongs. We do reactions. We have the free video version of the podcast, extras, everything pro wrestling on there, and you're not a part of the thousands of subscribers. We recommend you to hit that subscribe button now, turn on the post notifications. Videos be coming out of nowhere like an RKO, and of course, you already know, the grind is real.
You're fired!
I was just gonna say, if you don't subscribe to the We Are Wrestling YouTube channel, you're
fired! I can't wait until you got this power in your hands, boys.
I cannot wait until you set this thing up this weekend.
Friday. The day it comes out on the podcast, gents.
That's right, and what a week it has been for We Are Wrestling. We had multiple live watch-alongs this week. We also had a We Are Wrestling Extra. We had the Bad Blood predictions. And if you guys are looking for somebody to watch Bad Blood with tomorrow as this comes out, we will be doing a live watch-along over on the We Are Wrestling YouTube channel. So if you are looking to hang out with us, we will be live. And we're going to be at Blitzkrieg later on tonight. So if you do see us, come say what's up.
Yeah.
So, where should we start with this documentary?
Bro, let's start at the fucking beginning. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with No Name Vince.
All right, well, let's start off with Vince as an infant.
As a fucking infant. Okay, so basically he came from nothing and didn't even really know his dad until he was about, what, 12, he said?
Yeah, I think he met his father when he was like in his like early teens.
Yeah, he did not come from the silver spoon. You would think Vince McMahon came from no. He was not birthed in a wrestling ring. That actually came a lot later, and we're going to be diving right into that.
Yeah, so like let's talk about his upbringing because a lot of the times, like when you notice like a billionaire, like a millionaire, you think, oh, they like had like family inheritance, like they got this handed to them, that handed to them.
Mm-hmm.
And in this documentary, one thing I definitely learned was even though Vince is a fucking prick, the dude earned everything he got in his career.
And he was a fucking genius, bro. Holy fuck. Vince literally broke the norm of wrestling. Vince reconstructed wrestling completely to what we used to see wrestling and how it was performed and how it was almost structured in territories compared to world tours. Vince was the first. He was the first one to really do it. So it just to see how that came from, like, him, growing up with nothing with his mom. And I guess from what I remember, they had like some kind of like a strenuous relationship, right? They had like some kind of like strenuous relationship.
Yeah, there was like something there because I don't remember who it was during the sit down interview, but somebody said like his mother like sexually assaulted him growing up.
Something like that, yeah.
And then I know he did get abused by his stepfather a lot, and that was
Yep.
mentioned by Vince McMahon multiple times in the interview.
So I want to say very early on too, like for everybody listening, everybody watching the podcast, is it's no surprise that Vince has a very warped look of the world, which was actually a quote that was said. I think that was either by Dave Meltzer or somebody that was in the sit down interview said that, like, you come up from abuse, no wonder he's got a weird fucking sense and warped version of the world and what love is, and it really rings true because it was so weird hearing Vince talk about some of these things because we never thought, we never thought Vince was ever going to break kayfabe, so to speak. But this interview had so much like background knowledge of the early days and like what really happened from Vince's perspective, and like his childhood, things that we never got to dive into, like the starts behind it all. So if anything, you want to like start with like when he met his dad?
Yeah, we can get into that in just a minute.
Okay.
But I do want to give the fans a quick summary here of how I feel about the documentary
Go ahead.
just as a whole without going into too much
Same.
details because
Same.
we pretty much have like a whole like hour and a half here to talk about this.
Let's do it.
So here's like what I got out of it. A lot of people I'm noticing in their reviews, I'm noticing like a lot of posts on social media. The big problem they feel like is they're talking about WWE, like the business as a whole, and they're not really talking much about Vince McMahon, who the documentary is about. And here's what I think about it. I think that they did a fantastic job here because there's going to be a lot of people who know who Vince is that doesn't watch professional wrestling that are going to tune in. And I kind of liked what you were saying earlier in the beginning of this. It was basically Vince McMahon's perspective on all the allegations, all the things going on in the WWE, including his golden tickets like Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels.
So, like,
Undertaker.
I really like that we went into the history because WWE until now was Vince McMahon. And I think that's something that whether you love or you hate Mr. McMahon, the character or Vince as a human being, you can't deny from the moment he bought WWF from his father to the time that he pretty much retired. He was the WWE, and that's something throughout this documentary I feel like we're reminded of.
So to give like my basic like summary of the entire show itself, one, I agree with what you said. I feel like they kind of exposed a lot of the business more so than anything like crazy about Vince that we didn't know already. So I just want to put out, like, I wasn't disappointed. I I feel like I was misled. You know, I feel like I was misled in a way because it wasn't a burial by any means of Vince, especially since he denied to continue any interviews after those allegations came to light. You know, it was more so like why he is the way he is rather than what happened. Like, obviously we got what happened, you know, like the allegations, everything, but we didn't get any, you know, post allegation interviews from Vince, and we didn't get that from really anybody. A lot of these interviews were from like 2020 to like 2021, or like the middle of 2022,
Yeah, I think it
right
was
before he got
2000.
let go.
I want to say it was 2020 to like 2022 before
Yeah.
everything came to light.
So, you know, it's not what you think it is. It's not, for anybody that still has not seen it, go in very reserved. You know, like we're going to get into the details here if you haven't seen it, but take it with a grain of salt. There is some very interesting things in there that we really haven't heard, but there was more things on shedding a light from Vince as to what happened for certain things. So I would say go in, you know, obviously with a very open mind.
And that's the thing, like, I feel like that's the reason why I enjoyed this documentary more than the average person, because
Yeah.
going into this, I knew they weren't going to talk about the things post allegations. Vince, I knew obviously for like the lawsuit and pretty much like for court purposes and stuff, probably his party told him that it was best not to finish this documentary and finish the interviews, which is why we got to see Bruce Pritchard at the end, which I can't wait to really give my opinion on that, because that's something that, I'm not going to lie to you, I am pretty heated about. And we're going to get into that towards the main event, because it was towards the end of the documentary. But
Yeah.
overall, like, I really did like it for a casual fan, which I think is what it was all about. And yes, like, they kind of like talked about the business, but this is the business that Vince McMahon built. And when you think of Vince McMahon, a lot of the times, like, you'll see him on the news, or like you'll see him do like an interview, but a lot of the times it's advertising the WWE. He doesn't really address situations often, and the times that he's done it has been a few rare occasions, like in like the 90s with the steroids allegation going on that talk show, and then the whole Chris Benoit thing and Owen Hart thing. He addressed those things. But like when it comes to like some of the sexual assault things, he hasn't addressed that. Some of the things that have happened behind the scenes, he hasn't addressed. And when it comes to these documentaries, being a crazy wrestling maniac like we are, because we literally have a podcast and a whole YouTube channel covering pro wrestling, like, when it comes to the documentaries, like, I don't go into them with like crazy expectations, because we already know a lot of the stuff we're getting. If I get like one or two little things that maybe I didn't know, to me, that's a win. And I felt like there was definitely some things in here that I was very shocked to hear Vince McMahon talk about. Like, I didn't think we were going to get him talking about Owen, him talking about Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit was the one that really got me.
Yeah. See,
because a lot of the times, like with WWE being the chairman, being the leader of the board, you can't talk about those things, and you have to pretend like they didn't happen.
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, as you know, it's a very different time now. There's also been a lot of time in between. Vince himself is not terrified to talk about the situation. The reason that it was erased from WWE history is because that's the show. That's their product. Behind the scenes, documentaries, interviews with the public. I'm not surprised. Hold on. Sorry, had a cough fit. I'm not surprised. You know, like, it kind of like, whoa, like they're actually talking about it. But, you know, with it being a documentary, this was probably the perfect time to talk about it, especially if it's about Vince's life and, you know, him being the one that wrote that angle. It was actually kind of a breath of fresh air to actually hear about it, you know, and actually finally get that bow tied after what it happened in 2007. So, you know, almost 20 fucking years later, you know, 17 years later almost.
I can't believe like how long it's been.
Yeah, so like we're finally getting light on that and like what he was feeling in that time, like what happened, you know, what was going on behind the scenes during that. Like, it was, I'm not saying it was nice to hear about it, but it was kind of nice to hear about it. You know, like, it was finally good to get that closure after 17 fucking years, because I watched that shit live. I watched the next week live after Chris
And
Benoit
that's the
died.
thing that also too, like, people forget, like, when it comes to, like, shoot interviews and stuff, even outside the Vince McMahon documentary, the one question that people that worked in New Japan with Chris Benoit, who worked in WCW, ECW, and the WWE ask, how was it working with Chris? What's your
Mhm.
thoughts on the whole murder thing? Hell, they did a whole episode on Dark Side of the Ring on it because there's a lot of wrestlers that feel like they need to say something about it. There's other
Yeah.
people that, like, there's some people that can put the wrestler and the human separate. While
That
there's
and
others that
perspective
can't.
just works. Yeah,
And I think
perspective means
getting
everything.
Vince McMahon's perspective on it, to me, that, like, out of everything in these episodes really got me the most. But before
It's
we do get
important.
into this as well, one question I want to ask you is, what's got to be your favorite section that they talked about in this documentary? Like,
Ooh, there was
what
a couple.
fascinated you the most
There was a couple.
without going
So
into full detail?
I was really into, obviously like seeing Vince's upbringing because that's the thing I knew little amount of the little amount of. It was cool seeing, how he got into connection with his dad, like how he took over the reins, what he did, his dad's like last thing he heard from him. That was a very big part because I felt educated, very much so. Um, I think the biggest part that I really digged seeing was, I'm probably gonna that intrigued me the most was probably seeing Vince kind of talk about his on-screen character and like the shit he was able to do in front of his wife and like, like their talks about it and like, all that shit. So like probably like the early Ruthless Aggression era. Like during that segment was probably my my high point of the
Are you
entire
talking
documentary.
about, like, the WrestleMania 17 thing? Like,
Oh,
when they
I'm talking
talked
about like the
about,
angles with
like, with
Trish, Stacy
Trish,
Keebler,
Vince,
yeah, like them,
Trish,
all of
Vince,
them.
and Linda. That was like late Attitude Era.
Yes. So late Attitude Era going into the Ruthless Aggression. So like very, very early.
I
very early,
will
like
say,
SmackDown and
I
like late Raw.
really like, that's one thing I will say. Like, I also really did like that a lot because it's very interesting to get Linda McMahon's perspective on
God,
all of that.
yes. That was why. That was ultimately
And I
why.
think they did a great job in this documentary with that. Like, even
And
Trish Stratus
highlighting
even
it.
said, like, she never felt uncomfortable
Yeah,
doing
because
any of the
Linda was the one that told her to
segments.
kiss her on the forehead. Like she's like, give me a kiss on the forehead. The fans will fucking love that shit. Like that is a team player right there. That is a team player. I'm not saying what Vince fucking did to her is right. I'm not saying that I, would do it myself.
Yeah, with the
Fuck
affair
no.
stuff afterwards and
But
stuff.
dude, Linda, man, team player. If there's anybody out there that is fucking Linda McMahon, 100%. Like I don't agree with her views politically. I don't, there's a lot of things I disagree with when it comes to, Linda McMahon. I'm not a politics guy, but what a team player, man, because a normal woman, a normal wife would not have been able to stand that for even the first 5 fucking minutes. So the fact that she was able to see those things out, still be very much so like, into the like inside the company, still very much, I would say a good person at heart, I got to give it to Linda McMahon.
I think, like, you really hit the nail on the head on that one. And I just think, like, the whole McMahon episode, like episode 5, Family
Yes.
Business, that had
Family
to be
Business.
my favorite episode in this entire thing.
And
But for
seeing
me,
Shane.
what really got me was the Shane McMahon, and that's what I was just going to get into.
Yes.
That was, to me, the most interesting part of the episode because when he did leave WWE back in 2009, there was just like this weird like change that happened. Like, it just felt like there were so many like dark holes that like didn't get addressed, like just didn't make sense, like what was going on. And to like kind of hear like Stephanie McMahon's perspective on it. I kind of wish we got Linda's perspective because I know Shane did talk about how he's like a mama, he's a mama's boy. So like
Oh,
I kind
God,
of
yeah.
wish we got her like perspective on it because that would have been, I think, very interesting. But to hear like Bruce talk about it, Vince, it was very interesting to me because Shane McMahon, he's probably my favorite McMahon out of the family when it comes
So I
to
need
like
to say this real
on-screen
quick.
television.
I hate that Vince talked about all this shit that he did with his dad and what it took to like get like any kind of like loving embrace from his dad, but he turned around and did the same
And
fucking
did the
thing to
same
Shane.
thing to Shane.
That's
Yeah,
literally the thing that pissed me off about it the most because I'm
that's
like,
what got
dude,
me.
Shane is deserving of so much more. Does he have his faults? Yeah, but he is the only one out of all of them, including Stephanie, that wanted to be the least like Vince McMahon. And I have
Let
to
me tell
fucking
you,
give it to him.
Ben, this is what got me with Shane McMahon because obviously towards the end of this best in the world run that he was doing towards like
In
the
the
end of Vince McMahon's
world.
run,
Yeah.
there was a lot of reports about the Royal Rumble and what happened. And I kind of
Yeah,
wish
him
like they
taking
got
over.
into that a little bit towards the end, but I kind of see like what happened
But
with
that was
Shane.
Rumble 23, right? That was Rumble
That
23, I thought.
it was 23, like
Yeah.
22, I think.
I think it was
One or the other. I don't remember.
yeah, because Randy Orton said he wasn't going out to his fucking music, so you better get on out there.
Oh yeah, so it was 23, but that was like towards
Yeah.
the end of what Vince was running things. So like
Oh
I think
no.
like Shane was
So
trying.
it was the Rumble of 22. You're right
It
then,
had to be
because
22. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Randy Orton was gone, but Randy was right after him. But he's like, I'm not going out to your music, so you better get out there now. Yeah, so it was 22. You're right. Okay.
Yeah, it was 22 because I
Yeah, so what
think
the
during
fuck?
that time, like with Shane McMahon, like getting like from his perspective, he probably went into the politic thing with the whole WWE, which I kind of wish they like talked about a lot more in the documentary because the one thing that you do hear a lot of former WWE superstars talk
Politics.
about is the politics that happen backstage. I wish we got more of those perspectives. They could have done a whole episode on that, I think.
It's that top guy syndrome, bro.
Like, obviously, we got to hear it from like the important people like Hulk Hogan. We got to hear it from the whole
Bret
Bret
Hart,
Hart, Shawn Michaels,
Triple
and
H.
Triple H. So like we kind of got it, but like I think they could have done a whole episode with like former WWE superstars and really
Bro.
talked about like what happens backstage.
Another
under
fucking
Vince.
big thing that I loved about this documentary was all of the fucking Eric Bischoff WCW angles. Everything about it. Everything. The
Oh,
83-week segment,
perspectives
all
were
of it.
so good.
Can we just
They were
talk about
so
and just
good.
give flowers to Eric Bischoff real quick for this documentary? Come on, give him a round of applause, dude. Fucking Eric Bischoff, dude. Like, just again, prove that he's the fucking GOAT. Like, I'm becoming more and more of a Bischoff fan every fucking day. I swear
Well,
to
you
God.
two do have something in common. You guys absolutely despise AEW and Tony Khan.
Because he knows what the fuck he's talking about. He knows
I never
what he's
argue
talking
with Eric
about.
Bischoff's takes because this man did defeat Vince McMahon in the WWE for 8
That and he's in our intro, so give him respect.
I love Bischoff. I had a great experience with him.
Is he coming back to the classic, by the way, off topic?
No, I don't think so.
Damn! Oh, fuck. Okay.
But I will say this. It was really cool when they did talk about the war with like the Attitude episode. I thought that was really cool too. But one of the funniest, and I can't believe I'm going to say this now. And I'm kind of glad Ricky Knows Best is not watching this, I'm assuming. So I really hope that this doesn't get clipped or anything.
He probably is
I don't want
gonna.
him to hear this.
He's probably gonna hear it because he's a wrestling head and he has to get into it. And it's literally We Are Wrestling. So he's probably gonna hear it. Whether he tells you or not is on him. But what's up?
Dave Meltzer, I actually enjoyed the sit-down interviews he did in this documentary, and I'm not gonna lie to you, when
I
they
did
did
too.
talk about the venues and stuff, Vince going 90,000 people, and then you had Hulk Hogan 90,000 people, brother, and you had all these people saying 90,000, and then you have Dave Meltzer just say, no, it was only 73,000 people.
So
Because
like
we
this,
hear that all the time with like AEW, they talk about like
so
the inflated numbers, so that was kind of funny.
So when it comes to like the only thing I'll say is like when it comes to the Dave Meltzer sit downs, I actually enjoyed it because he has a lot of knowledge about the business, and it's not like he was fucking giving matches ratings. So I actually really enjoyed his interviews because he does have a lot of history with WWE. So it's like it's good, and Vince specifically. So it was good hearing from him.
And I really thought like his perspective too, which is why I think he was in this documentary a lot,
Yeah.
was very different from everybody else, which
He
I
could
think
be
they
a
needed
wrestling
that for this documentary to kind of understand both sides of like all the
dude.
situations happening.
He could easily be a wrestling historian more so than
Well, he
more
is
so
already
than a
wrestling
journalist.
historian.
But I
That's
meant
what
like
a
for
lot
a
of people
job,
would
not a
consider him.
fucking. But like without ranking matches, like this dude could be a spokesperson for wrestling, like 100% just based on his interviews. but I can't stand his match fucking ratings because he's wrong
Me
90% of the time. So I'm like, bro, anything
Yeah.
fact check wise for interviews, bro, you got it. Solid. I'll have you part of anything. If you're going to rate a match, stay the fuck away from it. There's no way in hell that we haven't gotten a 5-star Kurt Angle match. Suck a dick. Suck a
That's
dick.
fucking nuts to me.
Suck
But
a
now
dick.
let's get into like the territory days now with like
Let's
the
fucking
beginning
do
of the documentary. So we already talked about like Vince McMahon's upbringing, and I think like when it comes to all of these WWE documentaries, pro wrestling documentaries, I think they do a really good job describing the territory era. I think they do a really good job, like I think showing us like the visual of like the map. This is where the NWA was. This is where like WCW was. This is where WWF was. I thought that was really cool too, especially for like the casuals, which is what this documentary was more for.
So I'm going to give it to Vince, man, because I'm just going to say it, dude. Dude understood the assignment. Dude knew how to make money, and everybody was pissed off about it. But here's the fucking thing. Fuck every single one of those territories because they could have been Vince McMahon in knocking down those borders, and they didn't. And they also said, Vince Sr., you got to chill out. The kid's going to end up at the bottom of the river. Bro, you should have did it right after you said it because you gave the kid enough time to make that much money to make sure that was not going to happen, and it didn't. So I kind of got to give Vince that fucking cred for doing it because had he not, WWE wouldn't have been as big. It would not have been. We probably wouldn't have the pro wrestling we have today. So you know what? Good on Vince for saying, nah, fuck that, and took every territory and made it WWE.
Because here's what happened. Change. And this is exactly what happens.
Boggles my mind.
With a lot of successful people. You have to change. You can't just go with the times. Everything evolves through the years, and that's the thing about Vince McMahon.
The irony.
He had a vision that all of these other promoters didn't have because they wanted to just do the same old thing. And Vince Sr., he did it very successfully. But it was this was a new era. This was a new time. Something needed to change because a lot of these pro wrestlers, just like old school basketball players, they had to work shoot jobs outside of being a pro wrestler. And they couldn't do pro wrestling to live. So Vince McMahon going out there and investing everything he has into WrestleMania and getting the best people from each territory to make this global phenomenon, he is a fucking genius.
Absolutely.
It's crazy that a lot of other people didn't see the vision there during that time, which Vince did. And I think a lot of that had to do with seeing the way his dad was running the business.
It's just sad, fast forwarding time because he fell into that same fucking sickness his dad did where he refused to fucking change. And the irony is just sad there. But no, Vince definitely at the time understood that you had to change. And it's sad he couldn't keep that mindset, It's like he plateaued after a while and just was not willing to do a lot of things.
But that's the thing, though, in life. I feel like the older you get, the more stubborn you become. And
absolutely.
You don't want change. You're happy with the way things are being. And
you're stuck in your ways.
He's stuck in his ways, exactly. Which is why he needed to get the pedigree.
Oh my God! Did he? Dude? Oh, I can't wait to talk about corporate Vince and actually no. After this, it's character Vince because before we still got a couple steps.
We got quite some steps, man.
we got a couple steps.
We still have the steroid allegations we got to talk about.
We can't do that yet until we get into the fucking
WrestleMania 1 and Hulk Hogan. We got to talk about Hogan, brother.
Let's do it.
So, obviously, the first big star in this Vince McMahon era of the WWF was Hulk Hogan. And man, I thought it was great. They did a great job, really showing us new school fans that grew up in the late Attitude Era, going into Ruthless Aggression, and people that even pretty much are growing up right now in the business. I think they did a great job showing that nostalgia with Hulk Hogan, because I kind of felt like when they were talking about it and showing the stuff, hearing Hogan talk, hearing Vince talk about it, I felt like I was there in that moment.
Yeah.
Which I really liked because it was different. And I remember being a kid, I talk about this all the time. My mom and I going to Blockbuster, Hollywood Home Videos. I would get the Coliseum VCRs, and I would watch them, like the old WrestleManias and the Royal Rumbles and stuff. So it was kind of cool to like really get to hear Vince McMahon talk about like the creation of Hogan. And I kind of feel bad that like through the years, Hogan, like he obviously like he's the character, so he like never gave credit, but like everybody else never gave Vince that credit. And I think that line that Stephanie said in the documentary, that kind of struck me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that fucking sucks. Because Vince created Hulkamania.
Yep. Vince created Hulkamania.
And he
Vince
doesn't
created
get
Hulk
any credit
Hogan.
for it.
Vince created a lot of stars, man, and Vince never got credit, which is, again,
Hey, all the
horrible.
figures that are behind me, he created all these characters for the most part.
For the most part, he did, and it just, fuck.
Not these AEW ones, though.
Not Tony Khan did. But yeah, dude, that is a very, very sad perspective, and it's also, sad, fast forwarding to, the steroid era, Vince was a taker of steroids, which it was very apparent in the late 80s that he was taking steroids. I mean, you saw the picture of him in like their little like boat or something, or their camper, and he was like on the phone or something, and he's in his little fucking sweatpants shorts and his shirt, and he's just, his fucking shoulders are like the Mount Rushmore of fucking wrestling. And I'm just like, what the fuck?
But here's the thing, though. Because I'm going to be talking about accountability a lot in this documentary review, at least the one thing he took accountability for was he did do steroids. He admitted it.
Dude, and another thing that I was really fucking sad about, and I have so much disdain for Hogan even more so after leaving this, because I feel like if anything, we buried Hogan.
He always gets buried in every project he does.
What pissed me off so bad is that even Vince told him, just come clean. Just come clean. If Vince McMahon, who is the father of all evil, is telling you just tell the truth on fucking TV, just tell the fucking truth, bro. And of course, he didn't. Hogan, he created Hogan, didn't give Vince credit, and then betrayed his ass multiple fucking times, and was still welcomed home. But that also shows a lot on Vince's character, too, because what's best for business is what he goes for, not feelings. And I honestly really appreciated that.
That was repeated multiple times by Vince in this documentary.
Vince learned patience through Hulk Hogan, I feel like. He learned patience through Hulk Hogan, because holy fuck.
But if you were Vince McMahon's guy, he looked out for you, and that's something that I also came across throughout this entire review here.
He was releasing a lot of people to let them go to WCW because he was thinking about their families. Like, he's like, we might not even be here, so it's like, if you have to go for you, go for you. And I forget, we're probably going to get there eventually, like what turned that all around. But yeah, dude, like Hogan had it, man. Like, he had it all, but that was all Vince. That was all Vince. Like, Hogan did the moves, Hogan made the body, but Vince made Hogan, man. And it just, yeah.
Oh, definitely, for sure. And I kind of like that, like, they really, like, went into their relationship, like, fully from, like, when they first met.
Hogan was the first Undertaker.
All the allegations happening when Hogan left and then eventually came back to WWE. I thought that was really good as well. Because that's the thing, like, yes, it's a lot of stuff that we've heard of, but to actually hear it from the horse's mouth, Vince, that to me, like, made this documentary enjoyable for me overall.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the steroids allegations, because they were trying to pretty much end the WWF at this time because of the steroids, and they were trying to blame Vince McMahon for it. How do you feel about the allegations?
So, blaming Vince, because it's like, it takes more than one person for a whole fucking epidemic to spread. Like, it's not just Vince. Like, I don't think he was really forcing anybody to take steroids, unless he was. But
multiple people said, even I think Tony Atlas even said, like, Vince McMahon didn't force me to do it.
Yeah,
And,
so
like,
this
there's
is what
other
I'm
people
saying.
that said it.
It takes a group. So to put all the blame on Vince McMahon for the steroids is abso-fucking-lutely wrong. That is absolutely wrong, because he was not the one injecting people's asses. He was not the one injecting people with them straight up personally. I'm assuming he advised it at first when steroids were still legal, which at one point they were. But illegal distribution, intent to sell, that's not on Vince. It is that fucking doctor. It was the doctor. It was not Vince. So I think it was wrong.
And that's the thing too, like, and this is the thing I've learned throughout my life growing up with family members that have dealt with addiction.
Yeah.
You can't help someone that can't help themselves.
Yep.
And that's the thing, like,
Vince
let's
got off
say
him.
Hulk Hogan wants to friggin' shoot his arm and then friggin' eat his vitamins. You can't, like, Vince
Shoot
McMahon,
his
it doesn't
arms and
matter-
eat his vitamins. You fucking
doesn't
asshole.
It doesn't matter what Vince says or does.
doesn't matter
Hulk
what you
Hogan
say.
has his mind made up. He's going to say his prayers. He's going to shoot the steroid into his arm. And he's going to eat his vitamins. And
I'm
he's gonna-
stealing that. I'm fucking stealing that.
It's not Vince McMahon that's forcing Hulk Hogan to do that. Hulk Hogan's doing it because Hulk Hogan wants to do it. So I think with the whole steroids allegations, like, Vince McMahon, like, there should be a policy, obviously, which obviously nowadays there is, which I think they do a
wellness
better
policy
job with. But you always have to start somewhere. And I think that, like, Vince McMahon, he didn't look at it from the bigger picture, which I don't remember who said that after he was found innocent during this incident here.
Yeah.
But Vince McMahon, I think he got really comfortable at that point, which later led into other situations that we're going to be getting into.
Yep.
But I will say this, Vince McMahon, not his fault. The superstars, they were larger than life at the time. And when you're in that moment, when you're a rock star, you're going to do what you want, you got to do.
Number one example, Jeff fucking Hardy. Number one example, that dude got a mind of his own. You know, there no wellness policy stopped his ass. So no, you're absolutely right. It's not. You can't blame the head of the corporate of the fucking show. Blame the people that are part of the show that will refuse to fucking stop. Vince stopped. Why can't you? So I don't know.
Exactly. And even Bret Hart, somebody who absolutely despises Vince McMahon, even had his back during it and said, the whole steroids thing, Vince isn't forcing these superstars to do it. I never injected anything into myself, and I was a main event guy.
And that dude was fucking built. Like, John Cena never took steroids. He was just built.
Oh, I hate when fans fucking say
dude,
that.
Cena was in the gym.
You can't go into the gym. You can't eat right, and you can't work hard without people saying
everything is
this guy
steroids.
injects steroids into him.
Another one of those people. Fucking Batista. People like Batista at one point, yes, was absolutely on the juice, but was not for at least, I want to say 75 to 80% of his career, he was not on the juice. Today, people are fucking, like, literally throwing a goddamn fucking fit that he is so goddamn thin right now, and he's lean the fuck out. Like, he's still chiseled. Lean the fuck out right now. People are like, oh, is he sick? He's like, oh, is he sick? Oh, is he fucking, oh, he's off the juice. Clearly, I'm like, no. Dude is in his fucking mid-50s. He's in Hollywood now, wanting to do more dramatic roles. If he's just a big guy, he's going to be fucking typecast in a heartbeat. He's not going back to the ring, so why does he have to carry all that weight around anymore? Shut the fuck up.
Exactly.
Shut the fuck
now
up.
let's get into the Monday Night Wars now.
Yes.
So we get to see Ted Turner pretty much announce that
Good
like, he
old
wants
Ted
to go
Turner.
head-to-head with Vince McMahon, and then we start to see Kevin Nash
Eric
and
Bischoff.
Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff and all of these guys leaving the WWF to go over to WCW to really set themselves up for success for their family.
Who knew we were going to be ending the Hulk Hogan topic just to circle back around and go back to fucking Hollywood, brother?
Which I will say this, though, about the allegations before I do forget.
Go ahead.
I will give Hulk Hogan credit where it's due because there were people like investigators and stuff trying to tell Hogan to lie and tell them that Vince McMahon forced him to do steroids and forced him to do that. And then Hogan pretty much said to them, like, whatever you want me to say, I'll say because I don't want to get into trouble. But then when he went to the Supreme Court, he pretty much had Vince's back despite being with WCW.
Yeah, because one, relationships, they run deep. Two, why are you going to fucking lie Like, why? Like, you're making me lie on fucking stand. I'm not going to commit perjury for a fucking company. Like, no. Like, it even doesn't matter how much I'm getting paid. I can hop back to WWE and make even more money now that I saved his ass telling the truth. So, yeah, no. I'll give him that, but
That's, like,
I
the only
won't
thing I
give
can
him
give him
lying
credit
on
for.
camera. But I will not. Yeah, I can't give him credit for fucking anything else because holy shit, he's made a mess
Yeah.
of himself. But yeah.
Yep, he says one thing and then says the other.
Fucking, oh my
But I do
God.
think they did a great job now getting into the WCW thing with the like with the whole like New World Order thing with the NWO with Bash at the Beach 96. Like
Yep.
with Hulk Hogan, like talking about like how difficult like it felt for Bischoff to like get Hogan to do that.
Yep.
And pretty much like making that the staple point that really started to shift over
Yeah.
things. And that's what helped Eric Bischoff beat Vince McMahon for 83 weeks.
Yeah, and 83 weeks is not a fucking short amount of time. That's over a fucking year. That is almost that's almost a year and a half, bro. Like he was just whooping your ass for a year and a half straight. Like there was no pauses, there was no dips. Year and a half straight. WCW was the fucking wrestling show. Like the WWE was like fucking mincemeat at that point, except for, you got fucking stars like, Triple H finally breaking out. You got Shawn Michaels there because all of his friends were gone. They were fucking in WCW now. You had fucking
they
The
talked about
Rock,
they talked
Mick
about all
Foley.
the tormenting that, or the what's the word that happened to Triple
Torturing.
H. Torturing.
Oh, it
That
was
happened to
punishment.
Triple H.
Yeah,
Yep. The
punishment.
politicking. Somebody
Politicking,
had to pay
especially
for
because
the
what pissed me off about that whole thing, too, especially before the Monday Night Wars even happened,
Oh wait, are we talking about what happened
the
at that house
embrace in the
show
steel
inside the
cage.
cage?
Yes, and the fact that Vince McMahon greenlit
Kayfabe.
that thing, but still had to fucking, just put out some punishment and make it an example as someone. Shawn was world champion. Nash and fucking Razor Ramon and Scott Hall were fucking over to WCW. Who'd that leave left in a very precarious situation? Triple H. So he got
And then
the
they
shot.
talked about Austin 316.
Yes, they
During
did.
that
And
time. So
how
an
nothing
unfortunate
was stuck in. Yeah.
situation really benefited WWE a lot.
I feel like too, without that solid ass whooping that Triple H took on behalf of everybody, we wouldn't have the Triple H we have today. So honestly, like I think the universe
That is
worked the way it
true
was
because
supposed to happen.
beforehand he was doing the whole Hunter Hearst Helmsley thing, walking
Yeah,
around
Frenchman.
with from Greenwich, Connecticut,
And he's
Hunter
still Greenwich,
Hearst Helmsley.
and now he's still Greenwich, Connecticut, but he's Triple H now.
Hell yeah, he's the game now.
Yeah, Greenwich,
Boy.
Connecticut, bro.
But I felt like just during that time, I think they did do a really good job, like explaining like what was going on, and I really liked that we got perspectives from the WWE guys that
Yes.
stayed with Vince, and like Triple H talked about it a lot, like things needed to change, and like me and Sean, we would get like fined for doing this and doing that, but then like a couple weeks later, Vince would say, "That was good shit. You need to go out there and do that again," or something.
Yeah,
But
man.
one of the big things that happened, though, and I think this is where the Attitude Era really shift things over, and this is when it was a new era in WWE, the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah, the thing that
Survivor
still very much
Series
so echoes.
1997, which I couldn't believe the footage that we got from that.
And the
Even though we
backstage,
didn't get
like
Bret
Sean,
Hart-
you have
we didn't-
anything
we
to
didn't
do
get
with
Bret
it?
uppercutting him. The fact that we were able to get some of that backstage stuff, like
Yeah,
I
like
was very
fucking
impressed.
Brett's fucking wife was pissed at Sean. Like they were like, "Oh, I swear to God, I didn't fucking know anything," even though he knew everything that was happening. We actually got like fucking what the what happened moments after he spit on him. Like we got everything, and I'm like, dude. Holy fuck. I didn't think we were ever going to get the full scoop, but we finally did, dude. Like, we uncovered a lot of, like, backstage stuff and, like, things that happened and, like, led up to those moments or, like, the aftermath, you know?
And it was crazy too, like, because like knowing the history, like who was a Bret Hart guy, who was a Shawn Michaels guy during all the politicking, all the drama happening, like seeing Ken Shamrock behind Bret Hart, like ready to have his back, like if something went down, that was intense, dude. Because with Shamrock's like mixed martial arts background, me following his UFC career,
Shit
and
could have gotten
like being
ugly.
a big fan of his work, I was really like shocked with seeing that.
Dude, shit could have gotten very ugly in 5 seconds. So the fact that Shamrock was behind him,
I will say, like, despite like the bullshit that happened during the Montreal screw job, I gotta also give Vince McMahon credit where it's due.
He was
Like,
so
I know
collected.
Shawn Michaels and Triple H lied to the Hearts, and they had to stay under the radar. Earl Bender, he had to do the same thing because Vince McMahon wanted to take full accountability.
Yep.
And that I do respect because he pretty much told Bret, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
And Bret Hart, they were I guess, wrestling each other, and then Bret friggin' uppercutted
Knocked
him,
him.
and he said it was the best uppercut he ever gave somebody.
And because it was real. It was real. He connected full force, and Vince had a fucking shiner for like a week and a half.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Shiner, bro. And he apparently fucking just went right back and just flopped.
So, how do you feel now from Bret Hart's perspective on
I always knew he got
Montreal
fucked.
Screwjob?
Oh, dude, I always knew he got fucked. Like, there's no denying that. Obviously, I wasn't an adamant wrestling fan. I wasn't as hot on wrestling as I am today. You know, I wasn't the fan I was. You know, I was obviously very young too when that shit happened. So, I always knew that Bret got screwed. You know, I mean, if you stay away from a company you loved for many fucking years after the fact, even when it's all said and done. Yeah, Bret got screwed, bro. So, I mean, I've always kind of already been in that supportive corner. So it wasn't anything new that I learned other than what happened after and in between, the details from other people's perspectives. That's what intrigued me, but nothing shifted. Nothing shifted. It was everything I expected.
So you do believe that Bret Hart didn't care about losing the championship. He just didn't want to lose.
He didn't want to lose it to Shawn. He just didn't want to lose it to Shawn. That was it. He just did not want to lose it to Shawn because Shawn was a fucking dick then. Shawn did not deserve any world title then. Shawn was undeserving. Shawn was a fucking hothead back in the day in real life. It wasn't just his character.
In the sit down.
I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Don, do you have Netflix?
Oh, of course.
You need, and when I say need, you fucking need, if you haven't already, to watch Heels with Stephen Amell and Alexander Ludwig, the show, the fucking wrestling show. It's 8 episodes a season.
I think I watched 1 or 2 episodes.
You need to watch all of it. CM Punk is in both seasons. AJ Lee is in the second season as well.
Isn't Cody
She's
in
phenomenal.
there too?
Cody's not in it. But fucking Luke Gallows is in it. Jordan Grace is in it. Fucking Damian Sandow's in it. There's a lot of people that are in it as background characters, but dude, you need to watch it because if there is a Montreal Screwjob in that show, there is. Shawn Michaels is 100% was Ace Spade, which is Alexander Ludwig. If you guys don't know who Alexander Ludwig was, he is Bjorn Ironside from fucking Vikings, and he was also David Spade's son in fucking Grown Ups 2. The one with the haircut. You lied about the soup.
Is that the one that
you lied about the soup? Yeah, that's him. He is Ace Spade. He's Stephen Amell's brother. Yes, Ace Spade is 100% written about Shawn Michaels in the Montreal Screwjob, because if you see at the very end of the season, you will know what I mean. Shawn Michaels was 1,000% the influence on that character. And that is exactly how it played out. He was a fucking dick in real life. He didn't know what kayfabe was. He didn't fucking understand shit about dick and needed to be away from a world champion. Heels played their own version of a Montreal Screwjob so well to the point where I genuinely understand Bret Hart. You need to fucking finish that show, bro. It is so goddamn good. It is good. I just finished it.
Look into it. But getting off topic here real quick, I'm just going to say this short and sweet. Speaking of sons, I can't believe Happy Gilmore 2, MJF's going to be playing Happy Gilmore's kid.
That's wild to me. I didn't know that was the mystery role. Really? So that was the mystery role? Was he's playing fucking Adam Sandler's child in Happy Gilmore 2?
So we know he's gonna actually get screen time.
He's getting a lot of screen time. So a lot of screen time, and I guarantee he's gonna have an MJF pipe bomb of some sorts.
I hope he's a dickhead to Adam Sandler one time in the movie. That's all I want.
Oh, dude. I think he's gonna be a dick for the majority of the reason.
Face or do something.
I'm so excited. Now I have to rewatch Happy Gilmore, and now I have to fucking watch the second one when it comes out. And if so, we're both seeing it in theaters, son.
We have to. But now getting back into the Montreal Screwjob thing, in my opinion, I feel like Bret Hart, he had every right to feel the way he felt. But I think just the situation during the Montreal Screwjob, both guys wanted to go into business for themselves, which is why it didn't work out at all, because Bret Hart put over Shawn Michaels multiple times. He put him over at WrestleMania 12 in the 1-hour Iron Man match, which still to this day, a lot of people say that's the best Iron Man match to ever happen. Also, there was a time, I believe, WrestleMania 13. That's when Bret Hart was supposed to beat Shawn, but then Shawn Michaels lost his smile. So he left, and then Bret Hart always thought that Shawn Michaels did that because he didn't want to lose to Bret. And then going into Survivor Series, having to put over Shawn Michaels yet again as he leaves WWE. He didn't want to do it. But I also get it from Vince McMahon's side of it because not that long ago, Alundra Blaze, which Medusa, she goes by in WCW, she took their women's championship and pretty much threw it right into a trash can. So Vince McMahon
pissed
didn't
me
want
off.
that. But having the relationship that he had with Bret, there should have been that trust. You could have had him sign literally a one-day contract the night after Raw, and he could have given up the belt.
Yeah,
But then again, the Vince McMahon Mr. McMahon character wouldn't have been what it was if it didn't happen, because we had the sit-down interview with Jim Ross, and then Vince said the famous line,
Bret
Vince
screwed
didn't
Bret.
screw Bret. Bret screwed Bret.
So I gotta
got
go
the
out and
attitude
say
there.
that it broke my heart hearing, somebody threw like their championship in a fucking trash on another show, because that genuinely hurts. 2, Vince McMahon became Vince McMahon after that. He became the Mr. McMahon character. But 3, I mean, Vince kind of had no choice in the matter at the same time too, because he only really had Shawn Michaels to throw that belt on that actually had that credibility at that time. So it's like, it was kind of a lose-lose situation, and like, where do you want the heat, And he
Exactly, because
generated
Stone Cold wasn't
a
ready
lot.
yet.
No, Stone
Austin
Cold
was
just
picking
became
up-
Stone Cold.
He was picking up that momentum. That's why they had him going for the Intercontinental belt. But
Yep.
he just wasn't ready yet to win the World
big one.
Championship.
He was not
big
ready, and Shawn was the last veteran he had that wasn't in WCW yet. And then Bret just made it fucking so much worse when he started putting WCW in fucking the air. That
was
made it
nuts.
so much worse. That night
I can't believe
really
Eric
blurred
Bischoff,
the
they wrote
lines.
that opportunity with
Dude,
Bret.
that night blurred the fucking lines of kayfabe in real life for the fans, because everybody in attendance was 1,000% confused.
Yeah, they definitely were. But I thought they did a great job talking about the screw job and stuff. And then, of
Oh, yeah.
course, we go into 1998, and this is where they talk about Iron Mike Tyson and Stone Cold. And this is when everything shifted from WCW winning 83 weeks in a row to WWE going into the Austin era.
Yep.
And even talking about The Rock's involvement too. I thought that was really cool to see The Rock's perspective on the whole Rocky Johnson character, and then going from that to being The Rock, and then seeing Vince McMahon just say, here's the mic, giving you my trust. And then he went out there and cut that great Nation of Domination promo.
Yep, and that's how The Rock became The Rock. There's
Yep.
Vince knew
Stone
how to take
Cold.
adversity and turn it into gold, and that's what his talent was. Dude knew how to fucking work on adversity, and he knew how to work under pressure, and because of that, there's only a streak of 83 weeks for a reason. So it ended at
Exactly.
84.
But now something tragic happened in 1999. Over the Edge, one of my favorite all-time professional wrestlers, the King of Hearts, Owen Hart, tragically passed away, doing a spot as the Blue Blazer, going from the top of the stage, pretty much falling down to his death, and the show continued.
And apparently
your
the Blue
thought- what's
Blazer
your-
was punishment.
It was a punishment because, and they didn't talk about this either
Yeah.
in the documentary, but apparently back when we've heard this from multiple reports, they wanted to do a fair angle where Owen pretty much took Deborah from Jeff Jarrett. And
Yeah.
Owen Hart refused to do that because he's a family first guy. He loves his kids. He loves his wife.
And he doesn't want to
just-
confuse him.
He doesn't believe in any of that. So he didn't want to do it. So they punished him, which to me is absolutely crazy to see throughout his, and I've talked about this a lot, throughout his career, he's somebody that really should have been world champion.
Yep.
There's so many times they could have done it.
Owen, honestly, I'll say it, for me, dude, for the longest
Owen's
time,
better
this
than
might be the
Bret.
first. I liked Owen Hart more than I liked Bret. So when I found out, and I was only 4, dude, and I flipped. I flipped the fuck out, bro, because I was a big Owen fan. And to this day, man, I'm going to say it. Owen would have been the superior Hart had he still been around. 100%. he would have
Oh,
still been the king. Yeah.
1000%. And that's why a lot of people still to this day talk
He was a
about
born
this
natural.
incident. So now, what's your thoughts on the whole incident that happened?
I'm not even gonna mention the whole politics behind that because I've
Of
heard
course
so many
not.
reasons as to why, fucking it happened the way it happened. Like I've heard so many fucking people talk about it.
Like about this in the documentary.
Oh, I mean,
Do you
I
think
feel
the
like
show should have went on?
I feel like they should have at least made an announcement and wrapped up the show early and been like, all right, for people that didn't see it live, and for people that are still here, this happened. For the respect of everything going on and the craziness going on, we need to end the show earlier. Because the moment that dude hit the turnbuckle, he was gone. He was gone. The moment he hit that, and that footage has since then been destroyed. You will not find it anywhere unless somebody has home footage of it. You will not find it anywhere.
Nobody has footage of it, which is, I think, a good thing.
It's a blessing.
I hope that it never comes out, especially in like this time and age. Like, I really hope it never comes out.
Oh yeah,
that is
dude, but
just tragic.
shit does float to the surface, believe it or not. It does float to the surface. But I will 100% say that they should have ended the show there. They should have. They should have at least made an announcement, been like, we don't know what the situation is, but out of respect for the family, out of respect for the superstars affected by this tragedy, we need to close up shop now. Like, my God, I would have preferred that. Looking back at it, I would have preferred that because that would have
especially
been
with like going in depth about it. Like, I knew about the incident, but I didn't even like think about like the blood that was still like on the ring. And they made sure to show that like in this documentary to kind of make that point that like the show should have ended. And this would have been, in my opinion, the perfect time for Vince McMahon to take accountability.
Now, remind me, did they make the announcement that Owen Hart had passed away on the air?
Yes, Jim Ross was the one that did make the announcement on the air, so the fans at home knew what was going on, but the people in the crowd didn't.
So that's where I'm like, all right, dude, if you had to make that announcement and you are very well aware that a wrestler that had just performed tonight passed away in the ring, you would do the right fucking thing and shut this bitch down because somebody literally just died in the fucking ring and you know it. So, no, I get the show goes on, but not that way.
Especially like with Owen being like a locker room favorite, like you knew it affected the guys, like even
everybody.
Footage, like you could just tell everybody was just off.
Dude, everybody. It's not even just off. They're mourning.
But here's the thing though, like here's like what I want to say about this.
Yeah.
Like with Vince McMahon, with the whole Owen Hart situation, this would have been the perfect time to put your ego to the side and take accountability because no right man in their right mind would want the show to go on. And I think I don't know who said it during the sit down interview, but they said, what if Shane fell down? Would you have continued the show? And then Vince McMahon pretty much.
What if Eddie Guerrero had a heart attack in the middle of the fucking ring that time? And it was real.
And then Vince McMahon pretty much tried to, because he's been trying to stick with the same story for over friggin' almost 30 years now. Vince McMahon pretty much says, well, if I fell down, I would want the show to go on. But that's not the
They're
point.
asking you, Shane, not you. They're asking Shane.
Exactly. And just overall, like this would have been the perfect time to just take that accountability and just not let the show go on.
That right there was the moment that people should have realized that there was something up with Vince. Right there was the moment because if you're willing, no.
Like if Vince can go like literally 30 years later and say like he did steroids, why can't you say almost 30 years later the show shouldn't have gone on? I
fucked up. Like some people just genuinely believe it.
Documentaries, a lot of the times, yes, it can make or break somebody, like what you're talking about,
bro. So I'm going to answer your question.
There's a lot of times where, like, when it comes to a documentary, you can redeem yourself from some of the fucked up things you did.
Here's the thing, though, and this is where it's going to get appalling. If he didn't, he believes it. So if he didn't change 30 years ago and he didn't change today, he genuinely believes that the show needed to go on, and that's what's fucked up about it, and that's what makes Vince so fucked up, man.
Exactly. And we're going to be getting into even more fucked up things
Oh,
throughout this.
it's a slow burner
Because now we're really like working our way there.
to the juicy
So
stuff.
let's get into the family business now, which to me is my favorite episode and
Yes,
probably
yes.
your favorite.
Yes, it is.
You know, when we talked about our highlights, you talked about how you liked them talking about the Linda McMahon, Vince McMahon, Trish Stratus angle. Well,
Yes.
myself, I really liked the dynamic of Shane McMahon and Vince because we haven't really got to hear Vince and Shane really talk about each other because Shane doesn't talk much. Vince doesn't really talk much. Stephanie, she'll talk sometimes, but
She'll talk
you
shit.
don't really get to hear Shane and Vince. So I thought that this, oh man,
It was easily the best episode. Easily the best episode. All right,
And I
kick her
thought
off,
that
bud.
it was really cool them talking about Stephanie, how she got into the business, her going to college, and then like one of her rules was never to date a WWE superstar. And then
You
Vince
dated
McMahon would
the
always say, you need to find a guy like Hunter, like Triple H. And then they end up getting married and being strong.
don't wrestle. Don't date a wrestler. Dates and marries and has children and a whole family with the wrestler.
I know. But what were your thoughts on Stephanie McMahon throughout this documentary now that we're talking about the family business?
Man, I've always loved Steph. You know. I think that if there was anybody business-wise that could have taken Vince's job specifically as CEO, it could have been Stephanie in another world. I think that she's, you know, wonderful. I think she's brilliant. I think that you know, she's one of like the dynamic pieces as to why SmackDown worked very early on and like, you know, the upbringings of the show. I think that Steph, you know, really has a good mind on her shoulders, especially for the business. Obviously it helps with Vince being her dad, Hunter being her husband, Linda being her mom, so she understands politics. So it's like Stephanie McMahon is like the perfect. Oh, and she's tough because she has a brother, Shane. So it's like Steph is the epitome of everything that you would want as a leader for this business specifically. Stephanie McMahon, I could see being the first fucking female CEO of a major wrestling company eventually in the future. She is bred for this business, bro. So to see the early upbringings where she got her start, you know, she really shadowed Vince for a long time, bro, and really got to see, you know, the behind the scenes on how everything works. So she understands WWE's engineering through and through. So to be able to see, you know, her starts, to see who she shadowed, to see the respect she garnered from all of these big stars, all of these big people in this business, you know, it was nice. It was nice to kind of, you know, see, you know, where Stephanie McMahon was and what it took to build her into the Stephanie McMahon we have now. So I loved it.
I really love Stephanie McMahon even more now than I did before. And I was always a Stephanie McMahon guy.
Same.
I've always enjoyed her character. I've always respected her as a person because she knows what's best for business. And what I got out of this documentary is she's Vince McMahon, but not with the fucked up traits.
She's everything good about Vince.
Exactly. Everything good about Vince. And with Stephanie, like, I really like the fact that she also went into this documentary just being completely real and completely honest. And that's the thing. Like, she talked about, because a lot of questions that were asked about her was the stuff that her dad made her do on television. Because there were some things that a lot of us fans throughout the years have questioned, like Stephanie McMahon, like bending over and.
Oh, shut the fuck up. I love that shit. I love that shit.
Okay. More personal stuff to the side. Talking about the documentary here. But they were talking about all this stuff, like, because Vince McMahon is the one behind the creative side of it.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, I think, like, this could have been the opportunity. Like, she could have been saying, like, oh, it made her feel uncomfortable, this and that, but she was honest. She knows at the end of the day, it's a show. And the fact that she's able to separate her family life to her pro wrestling life, to me, that's something that's really incredible because there's a lot of wrestlers in the business that can't separate the two. Vince McMahon is the prime example. He can't separate the character and the Mr. McMahon.
My God, I hate you because now you have that picture just caked into my mind because I'm just
they
like,
did show that in the
motherfucker.
documentary, so it's caked in my head too, Ben.
But yeah, there was a lot of questionable shit. Like, again, one of the storylines that never made it, thankfully, was the fact she got knocked up by her own dad. That
Yep.
even she was like, hell no. Like, that's just fucking weird. And even Vince was like talking about it so casually. I'm like, bro, if you think that this was a good idea to even present to your kid, there is something up with you, bro. So the fact that you're comfortable doing a lot of these things makes me kind of uncomfortable. But at the same time, I'm like, I mean, you had to do what you had to do, but it didn't go too far with her because you're the boss's
It did,
daughter.
and she was able to separate the two as well.
Exactly.
And that's something that, like, I've learned to love and respect Stephanie, because even Trish admitted it in her interview. It was a different time, which is why, like, there was bra and panty matches and pillow fights
Yep.
and a
All
lot
that
of
shit.
sexual things going on in the WWE, was because it was just a different time in the late 90s. This is when things were becoming more reality based.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they did a great job talking about that. And I think, like, even Vince McMahon, like, during that time with the whole Trish Stratus and Linda McMahon angle, I think all three of them in their sit-down interviews did a great job talking about it, because it really was a different time. So, like, you can't really, like, talk about it now. Like, yeah, there's some things, obviously, that, like, you look back and you're like, that's, like, kind of weird. Like,
That's
we all do.
sketch.
Like, even with, like, the dark side of Nickelodeon, like, that documentary, there's a lot of things that are fucked up that we
Yep.
look back at from Dan Schneider and we're like, what the fuck? And just through the years, things change. And I think, like, throughout just the whole Vince McMahon, like, documentary, like, at least, like, with the whole Linda McMahon, Trish, Vince thing, I thought that they really did a good job, like, making that a point.
Yep. Absolutely. It's weird that I never thought we'd ever have to compare Nickelodeon drama to fucking WWE drama, but here we are, 2024. What an amazing time. Yeah, I think that, Linda McMahon definitely helped put on some perspective into, like, Vince's antics. Trish Stratus definitely helped put some light onto it, but it's also interesting, what people are, like, willing to do and what they're comfortable doing, because, dude, I don't care how much money I'm getting paid, I am not fucking around with somebody's married individual. There's no way in hell. Like, even, especially on camera. Especially on camera.
I'm not doing, Ben? I am not getting in that ring and fucking on my knees barking like a dog.
Or kissing
is
Vince's
something I'm
ass,
not
literally.
doing.
The Kiss My Ass Club. Like, dude, so many people got punished
Yeah, they
for
didn't
that
really
shit.
talk about the Kiss My Ass Club that much.
That pisses me off because that was such a hot thing back in, like, 06. Like, you're gonna have to kiss my ass, and then his cheeks
Also,
would just come
Attitude Era,
out.
too. Very hot, too.
My God, I hate that they didn't touch on a lot of those subjects, because holy fuck, like, how are you leaving that out?
But I will say one thing that I did find pretty here's, like, one thing that I will say, like, that I found pretty interesting too. So Vince McMahon, in his interview, he talked about how they don't do incest, how they don't talk about, like, rape, and then they're pretty much, like, showing all of, like, the things that he's saying, like, WWE television hasn't done, and kind of, like, blurring the lines and stuff.
Okay, Vince. Okay. Like,
Yeah,
literally,
pretty
one of the
much.
greatest things that I think I heard from that documentary, especially during this episode, actually, ironically enough, so it's good that we're talking about it. We thought of it as entertainment, but we're looking back at it now, it was just Vince being disgusting on camera and having an excuse and justice to do it. And we were literally fucking eating it up.
Yep, because around the time, people weren't really looking at it from the perspective that we're looking at it now.
Yep, we're looking at it actually as assault now. So now that we're looking back, like, damn, that did seem kind of fucked up, because it fucking was.
It was. Absolutely. And we also do get into, like, ruthless aggression era now, because they did talk about, like, the new era. They needed somebody new because The Rock went off to Hollywood. Stone Cold was frustrated with his creative. So they kind of really got into John Cena.
Yeah.
His run, which I thought was really cool to see, like, his relationship with Vince McMahon as well throughout that time. Being somebody that was so close to losing his job, and then all it took was him freestyling on a bus with the boys and Stephanie McMahon being in that bus.
Again,
That
Stephanie,
really
you the
changed
goat.
his
She
career.
discovered John Cena. I will 100% say, just really quick, off topic. So since you mentioned that, like fucking, Stone Cold to fucking Bret Hart to Shawn Michaels to The Rock to fucking John Cena, and now the John Cena to Roman Reigns. I'm gonna ask you a question. Who do you see? Do you think we already have seen who the next Roman Reigns is? Do you think that we already have him? Do you think he's already part of the roster, but we just don't know it yet?
Yes, we do.
Do you think it's Braun Breaker?
There's two people that are
There's
competing
two
for that
people.
spot right now.
Really? Okay. So who do you have?
So the two people that are competing for that spot, in my opinion, right now, and I feel like it is a little more clear that it's going to be Braun Breaker because there's just something about him. I don't know what it is. Like he
Yeah.
has it,
You just
but
gotta
this other
harness it.
guy also has it as well, and that is the new NXT champion, Trick Williams.
Okay.
I
Okay.
really think Trick Williams could be that next guy because the whoop that trick, like if they keep that, they keep the presentation, everything about him, like he fits the modern era when it comes to like wrestling and outside of wrestling because the dude has a personality. He's over
Yeah.
as fuck. The fans love him. And the whoop that trick thing is just so easy to get behind, just like John Cena back in the day when he was doing his Thugonomics rap. It was so easy to get behind. Stone Cold tormenting his boss. So easy to get behind. Hulk Hogan being the American hero. It was so easy to get behind because he was going against the Iron Sheik, and that's how they were able to put him over as Hulkamania. So I think with Trick Williams having that, he might give Braun Breaker a run for his money for that main event spot.
Yeah.
But Breaker, I think, is the better performer in the ring, which in this era, too, that's something that really has to be considered if we're looking for that next guy. And I think Breaker could be that.
So I'm going to go with Breaker. Had this dude shaved 20 years off of his life, it would have been LA Knight. It would have been. 20 years ago, it could have been LA Knight, dude. That's what I'm saying. If LA Knight was 20 years younger, or maybe even 10 years younger, he could have been the next John Cena because he has the fucking riz of the Rock, bro. That dude can carry shit.
I hate to say this. The reason why I wouldn't say LA Knight, even though if he was like 10 or 20 years younger, it's not because he's not talented at all. I've been following this dude's career going all the way back to TNA as Eli Drake.
Yeah.
You already are comparing him to The Rock. There's other people comparing him to Stone Cold. And if you are looking at the next guy that's going to be like the captain of the ship, they can't have that quality. You can't be, this guy's the next
you know
Rock.
what? Now that you put it that way, I can understand that.
Next guy is John Cena. That's why I'm saying Braun Breaker and Trick Williams are the closest things to it. Because, like Braun Breaker, he gets the comparison sometimes to Brock Lesnar and Goldberg.
He does,
and that's the thing about him. He has the movesets like Goldberg, except he can actually work in the ring. Brock Lesnar, on the other hand, he doesn't have the mic skills that Braun Breaker has.
See, here's the thing, though. Braun
Breaker's his own man.
See, I wouldn't say that, though. I think Braun needs to become his own man because he is very compared to both of those people. Very. And it's not even just slightly. The dude is literally a modern-day Goldberg, and you need to cut yourself away from that and give yourself personality.
But now, Ben,
because if there's one thing he doesn't have.
But here's the thing now. This is why I'm saying Trick Williams could sneak in and take that spot from Braun Breaker, because who can you compare Trick Williams to? He's his own man.
No, I have something. I don't want to say it because I'm going to come off racist. I'm going to come off racist if I say it, but Booker T. I'm going to say it, Booker T. Like, he reminds me a lot of Ron Killings and Booker T, bro. Like, I'm going to say it. Like, I don't mean that in a racial standpoint, so fucking please do not see it that way. He has those qualities.
He does have like the athleticism and like, He pretty
Even in
much
terms
has
of
the
moveset.
athleticism and height like Booker T.
But
Like,
I will give him
You're not
the
wrong.
100%. He is a lot more of his own man than any of these other people that we've talked about. I will say that I will agree that out of all of the ones we talked about, Trick Williams is probably the highest.
And that's why, like, I think it's between them two, but it's only a matter of
Braun
time
has
before we
time.
see what happens. Because even MJF, he's another guy that could leave AEW and go to WWE and be that guy.
Yeah,
Could happen.
exactly.
Because
So it's
I
like
think he has all
we
the
don't know.
all the quality traits in the world to do it.
And he got time too. He's younger than me, motherfucker.
Plenty of time. But now
Yeah.
let's get into this ruthless aggression era.
Let's do it.
In the documentary, because there's definitely a lot of things that they talked about during this with John Cena and like his working relationship with Vince McMahon and the way that things worked out for him. And I thought that was really cool. Like, I did enjoy seeing that. And this is where this is where the big issues start to happen with Vince McMahon. And that is the Chris Benoit tragedy that happened. Because WWE all went through this really dark period where the steroids and all the drugs started to be brought up again after what happened in the early 90s.
Yep.
So now let's talk about that, because during that time in the Ruthless Aggression era, they talked about this a lot throughout the documentary, a lot of wrestlers were dying very young, less than, I believe, 39 years old.
A lot of it was because of like the overuse of steroids, the painkillers, heart failure was a thing, cardiomyopathy was a thing, CTE from non-stuff concussions.
Failure.
Exactly, concussion, CTE, like that all was happening because of the reoccurring things stacked up from all of those fucking painkillers and shit, man. And like the nonstop heavy hitting matches, that does take a toll on your body. And during that time, dude, you can take the steroids out of you, but if how much you've been abusing them, that shit is lifelong, dude. Some things do not go back to normal. And depending on what you're doing, how much your heart's exhilarating, it could fucking fail. So yeah, that during that time, a lot of wrestlers were dying.
And that's the thing that's tragic. And this is where a lot of the news, the talk shows, they were bringing up the drugs, which I think in this time and age, it was time for something to change. And that's when WWE came out with the wellness policy.
Yes.
After the whole Chris Benoit thing went down, because I think that was like really like the final straw that really broke the camel's back.
Oh, absolutely. That was the nail in the coffin.
Definitely.
Everything changed after that. We went PG as fuck after that.
Yes, we did, which I think, looking back at it now, I know we shit on the PG era a lot, but I think WWE really needed to do that to really kind of clean things up, which now, like, we're starting to see, it kind of paid off for a lot of the professional wrestlers, because now, like, you can't take unprotected chair shots. You have to be safe. And it really, like, saved a lot of years on these wrestlers' lives. But I think now that we're in 2024, like, seeing, like, the safety protocols and, like, seeing, like, now really what's AJ Styles do? The cold plunges.
Yes.
And, like, doing, like, chiropractor.
And also vitamin
chiropractors.
fucking injections too. Vitamin injections too. Like vitamin bags, like that's a thing now too. And like that's helping put longevity on there. We're getting like actual like, sports tape on people's like injuries to help nurse them. Like we're getting actual time off when you request it now. Like fucking Seth got to take some time off after coming back shortly, and he just popped back up on Monday Night Raw. Like it's a very different time now. It's a very different regime. Time off, requested time off, holidays. You get to see birthdays, births, weddings, funerals. You get to catch all of those now.
WWE now has an app, and all you have to do is just
request off, and that's crazy.
And
there was no such thing.
Too.
And even just by that time off gives your mental a reset. So mentally, the wrestlers are there. They're not abusing drugs. They're going to the gym. They're eating healthier. They're happier now because they have the family morale behind them and a company that actually cares about them. So even those little things that you would think have nothing to do with the other thing, believe it or not, it does, because depression is the biggest killer in fucking the world.
Yes, it is. And that's the point I was trying to make. Like, I think WWE needed to go through the PG era to really
come back to where we're
point
at
now where everybody like,
14 again,
knows how to
bitch.
work safer, and they could also still make it a little edgier at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, them talking about that and explaining it and, like, involving, like, all, like, the controversial things that have happened, it makes sense why they decided to make that change in, I believe it was 2009, 2010.
Gotcha.
But now when it comes to the Vince McMahon thing with Chris Benoit, I do have the quote here, and I am going to read what Vince McMahon did say during his sit-down interview. So Vince McMahon pretty much spoke about Chris Benoit's death and pretty much said this. Chris Benoit was thought of as an excellent in-ring performer and, as far as we know, a great guy. There is no correlation between taking steroids and what happened to Chris Benoit. Human beings are flawed. Chris went nuts. It happens in every form of life, in everything. So that's the only thing I could take away from it. What's your thoughts on Vince McMahon's statement about Chris Benoit?
He's not wrong. He was 100% being straight up. Like, no, Chris went crazy because of all of his fucking brain injuries. We saw the fucking scans of the fucking scans of his head, dude. The dude had a fucking brain of an 80-year-old with Alzheimer's. Dude was not mentally there anymore, dude. Like, if you saw his final match, he was not there. He was physically there, but he was miles away, and you could tell in his performance too. Like, you could just tell that he was done. And for what reason, we found out, and it was very harrowing. But to say that it was steroids, no. It has no correlation with the two.
Yeah, and a lot of these talk shows during the time, which I'm surprised they didn't show a lot of the clips here. Maybe they did and I'm forgetting, but I know they would bring on a lot of these former WWE superstars, and they would bring on the WWE superstars like to these shows, and they would address everything about like the whole steroid allegations and stuff. Like, yes, the steroids like did play like a part in like a lot of the drug abuse and stuff that's happened in professional wrestling, but for Chris Benoit, it was the CTE that happened and all the concussions that happened without being treated. And I think like they definitely tried to make that a point in this documentary, because they even brought in Christopher Nowitzki, who was a former WWE superstar that pretty much went to Harvard, and he studies brains and brain injuries and stuff because he dealt with really bad concussions throughout his run, which I kind of liked that they brought that in, because they brought like his perspective and Vince's perspective. And now, like, instead of like Christopher being like the other guy that was like trying to find everything he could, like on Vince McMahon, he wanted to work with him and try to make things better, which I think has a huge role in the way that professional wrestling is going now, because they are taking concussions very, very serious. And the fact that Christopher Nowitzki goes to the WWE Performance Center to like treat the teach these rookies what they're doing is very serious and can lead to, you know,
lifelong
like concussions and stuff. I think that was really good having him on the documentary.
I agree heavily.
Somebody that is very knowledgeable when it comes to like concussions and CTE. But I'm very surprised that Stone Cold I can't believe he freaking had a cameo in this and pretty much said like he doesn't believe in CTE.
All right, we're gonna just glaze right over that.
I know that's not Vince McMahon. Let's not remember that. We're talking about Vince McMahon.
Yeah, let's glaze over that comment.
Oh man, that's
arrogant. That's just arrogant, but I'm not gonna even comment on that.
And then also, speaking of concussions, another thing Vince McMahon talked about too was with The Undertaker, which I thought Undertaker's sit-down interviews were great as well, because
always are.
He was giving an old school perspective. Because obviously, like, we got the perspective from Dave Meltzer, who's a wrestling historian. We got the perspective from Vince McMahon, because that's who the documentary is all about. We got perspectives from his son, his daughter, his ex-wife. And
other
now,
superstars.
like, we got from Undertaker, which I thought was good, because he even talked about how at first, when it came to like the unprotected chairs and stuff, like Taker, because he was somebody that always stayed in character, and he was somebody that didn't like the change, but later on realized that like it needed to happen.
Yeah.
So I thought that was also pretty interesting. But speaking of concussions, obviously one of the things that gets talked about a lot is The Undertaker's concussion in WrestleMania 30 with Brock Lesnar and forgetting the match. And Vince McMahon pretty much thought that Undertaker wanted to forget WrestleMania 30 because he lost to Brock Lesnar.
No, he literally fucking was concussed very early on and remembered nothing about the match because he got hit that hard.
Yeah, I could not believe that perspective from Vince.
Yeah, no.
But what were
no.
some things now let's go a little bit outside the documentary a little bit. What are some things that you learned about Vince in this?
That no matter what he did, he was a fucking genius, and without him, WWE would not be WWE. And that, if we're talking professional wrestling, he's really the founding father of what we have today, sports entertainment. He is the founding father of what we love, and also just kind of confirmed every weird suspicion I had about him. That's it. It's nothing. I learned nothing new. If anything, it just confirmed everything for me.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got from it. But yeah, I learned a lot about Vince McMahon in this documentary. Still doesn't really like to take accountability. He can't. He's pretty much like a blend of his character and real life. He can't find that.
He's never been able to separate it. He became his character.
Yeah, and he's never going to be able to separate it because when you're sucked in for so long, there's just no way you're getting out.
This was also said in the documentary too. No publicity is bad publicity. Well, Vince, because of all of your bad publicity, you became Vince McMahon, Mr. McMahon, the character, and there's no separating that now because you wanted this. Now you're going to have to lie in that bed, son.
Exactly. And it's crazy to me too, getting back into the Shane thing real quick.
Yeah.
Shane McMahon even said he still loves the business, and there was a big disagreement. They really didn't see eye to eye, and I couldn't believe this is the line that got me in this documentary. My favorite thing, the biggest thing that I got from this was what Paul Heyman said, because with Shane McMahon pretty much had this idea. Vince McMahon didn't like the idea. They were at dinner, and Vince McMahon literally gave him a knife and said, if you want this to happen, you need to freaking stab me right here. And I guess Paul Heyman witnessed that, and pretty much it was Shane, he tried to put Shane what he went through as a kid.
Yep.
And it's just, man, it's crazy to see Shane McMahon, how much love he has for the family business. And
for his dad, but his dad just doesn't fucking care.
His dad doesn't care. But it was a heart warming moment though, with the Hell in the Cell, Vince hugging him and stuff too. You could tell that meant a lot to Shane.
Yeah, because it took him almost fucking dying for it to happen. And I feel that Vince, again, you grow up in a warped world, you're gonna have a very warped perspective of it. So yeah, no. I don't know. Big deal or not, you finally got dad's hug and approval. Congratulations. What do you have to do to get another one?
So now, before we do get into our final thoughts on this entire documentary and stuff, there's another person that we haven't talked about much that was in the documentary quite a bit throughout, I think, all the episodes. And that was Vince McMahon's right-hand man, Bruce Pritchard. Somebody that has been his right-hand man when it comes to creating larger-than-life characters, who is still currently in WWE working with creative with Triple H.
And Triple H, yeah.
So what was your thoughts on Bruce Pritchard's takes on a lot of the things? Because it seemed like he did side with Vince throughout the entire thing.
Well, Bruce Pritchard was there for a lot of Vince's things, he was there very early on. So, I mean, there's no secret that, him and Vince were going to be very tight. I mean, I don't think Bruce took part in any of those horrendous things. No, I don't think that. But I've noticed that he sided with Vince a lot, but a lot of the things he sided with Vince was right about. It was about the business. It wasn't about anything else or how, fucking scandalous things were. It was just all business things that furthered it. So if anything, having Bruce Pritchard there was probably the best thing that could have painted the full picture that we needed. Bruce is probably one of the greatest minds in wrestling too. You know, like Bruce Pritchard is up there with, Vince McMahon, Tony Khan, and I'm gonna put Tony Khan in there because he is a CEO. All right, he is.
He is. Yeah.
He's a booker as well, and he's done some great things, but he's done mostly horrible things. He's up there with Eric Bischoff. He's up there with fucking Ted Turner. He's up there with a bunch of these guys. So, dude, I love the fact that Bruce was in it.
Me too. And like, despite people liking what he had to say or not liking it at all,
He
we
was needed.
needed to have all of the perspectives. That's what makes a documentary good.
And
That's
who
what
better to fill
makes the
those gaps than a
documentary as
right-hand man?
whole. Exactly. And
Exactly.
that was his right-hand man throughout the years. And that's the thing about Pritchard. Like, I enjoyed everything he did throughout the interviews, except for the final 2 episodes, the end. And this is where, like, for me, I wasn't happy with Pritchard because he is somebody that I do respect a lot for
Yeah.
everything he has done in the business. But, like, going on and, like, talking about when Stephanie McMahon left WWE during I believe it was the final episode, episode 6, the finish, pretty much said he does not know why she left. And I think that that is a load of bullshit. It's obvious why Stephanie McMahon left WWE because she was ready to take on that role of running the WWE. And pretty much Vince McMahon, he decides to come out of retirement because he doesn't want to leave yet. And then a couple days later, she decides to resign.
See, I'm going to respectfully disagree there. I think Steph left because of everything that was happening. Because she left right before the light of the allegations with Vince happened. Because what I think happened is Stephanie found something and she wanted no part of it. And I think that's why she left. Because literally 2 days later, Vince McMahon is gone from WWE. He's got a massive sexual assault case on him, and everything is blowing up into proportion. So I think Steph knew. I think Steph is the one that found everything, the big thing. I think that's why. And I think she did not want to have her name plastered next to it. So the fact that she's finally coming back slowly into like the mold of WWE, I think that that's just all signs pointing to it now. It's time. It's calmed down a lot. The smoke's clearing. We can get on with the show. Stephanie can slowly be, integrated back into the product. So I think she left because of that. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, of course, and I totally respect that. But here's the big thing that got me with Bruce Pritchard in this episode. That I think this is what really grinded a lot of people's gears.
Okay.
And that was the final statement when Vince McMahon decided that he didn't want to finish the documentary. Bruce Pritchard went on and somebody asked him, like, oh, like, how was it listening? Like, how was it like seeing the documentary before it comes out? And Bruce Pritchard pretty much went into defense mode for Vince McMahon. You could definitely tell. And Bruce Pritchard pretty much just said, this documentary was a load of shit. This was a way to just paint Vince McMahon, the character, as a bad guy. And basically the character is Vince McMahon. And pretty much like blasted Netflix for the way that they did this documentary and not talking about Vince. How do you feel about that?
Sit on it and spin, dude. The world's going to keep going with or without him.
Exactly.
That's all I got to say is you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like for me, it kind of pissed me off with that because, like, when it's all said and done, like with Bruce Pritchard, like I really just don't have anything to say about it. It's just for me very disappointing because he is somebody that I really respected a lot, and I think that this documentary, it wasn't just shitting on Vince McMahon. Like, I don't know why a lot of people, like, in this, like, during their reviews and they're talking about it are saying, oh, like, this documentary was just a way to just pretty much shit on Vince McMahon. They pretty much, like, gave us, like, a whole history lesson on, like how Vince McMahon built this multi-billion-dollar company called the WWE and pretty much addressed a lot of the controversial things that have happened throughout the years that he hasn't talked about. Like with the whole referee thing with Rita Chatterman, talking about the steroid allegations, the CTE, the concussions, and a lot of the sexual things that have happened throughout it. So I thought the documentary, maybe the way I viewed it was different than a lot of the way other people viewed it.
Yeah,
Which I
that's
always
how
do
it's always
say,
going to be.
and that's the thing, I always say it, we all do have we have our own way of seeing things. We all have our own perspectives. And yeah, that's the thing. But I will say this though, and the only thing, and I'm gonna leave it as this before we do get into our overall summary about this. I will say I think Vince McMahon is guilty with the allegations with the whole Janelle Grant thing. Because one thing that he did mention throughout this entire documentary that I caught was the dude is obsessed with sex.
Yeah, that's all he fucking.
Clear.
Yeah, he fucking. The interviewer literally just asked him randomly, "What's on your mind right now?" He was like,
there's
business
two things
and
in my
just
brain.
business and something that has to do with sex." That's all he can think about is sex constantly. I'm like, bro, where that can be healthy, the way you're thinking about it is completely unhealthy. If you have a dildo that's named Andre the Giant or the Big Show or Omos, you need to get the fuck out of here. You need to get the fuck out of here. You're sick. But yeah, no, that's I don't know. When it comes to the documentary and, an overall summary it's basically just an educated viewpoint. There is no burial of Vince McMahon fucking anywhere. It is not what Bruce Pritchard and everybody's saying. It's literally just a history lesson. That's it.
Honestly, that's how I feel about it too. It's a history lesson, and Vince McMahon talking about a lot of the controversial things for the very first time in over 20, 30, 40, 50
It was
years.
only so great because Vince was actually speaking. That's what made it great.
Exactly. Exactly. Plus, for me, the big thing that made it enjoyable, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, was the family. Hearing Linda, hearing Stephanie, especially hearing Shane and Vince's relationship, because none of us knew any of that was happening with Shane, because they don't really talk about it much. But what do you rate this documentary out of 5 stars?
Out of 5 stars, I'm going to give it a 3.5.
That's fair. I'll probably give this a 4, in my opinion. But to all the We Are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide, let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on the documentary. We do want to hear it, and we will probably pick the comment of the week next week for this documentary, because we do kind of want to hear your perspective on it, because you got to hear ours throughout this entire episode. I think we're going to definitely have to do episodes like this, Ben, moving forward when we have WWE PLEs, because the thing is talking a little bit behind the scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to a WWE PLE, it is kind of difficult to do a whole episode of the We Are Wrestling podcast.
Yeah.
Talking about just AEW news. And a lot of the times with the WWE PLEs, the ratings aren't the best either, because a lot of people are looking forward to our watch alongs, because we do interact with our live chat. We love to hang out with you guys while watching the show.
So how does this sound?
More people are just not as interested.
Why don't we, for pay-per-views, pre-pay-per-views, and pre-Big Fives, why don't we have a podcast dedicated to a certain superstar that we are looking the most forward to at the PLE, give it their own history thing, their own thing that made them so great, and then if not the superstar, if a documentary comes out, if an Untold comes out, if a WWE 24 comes out, we can base it on something like that with just one big topic. So that way we're not getting lost in it. So we can at least do it that way, so we can do more podcasts like this.
It changes things up a little bit too.
It does.
Because with the documentary reviews, I really enjoyed doing them a lot.
I love them.
They're some of my favorite podcasts to do here.
And
just overall, back in the beginning, if you have been a We Are Wrestling Maniac since the beginning, when we first started doing the podcast, it got to the point where the news was very stale, and you, myself, and our old co-host, Danny Huckins, we decided that we need to do episodes based off of things, and we could always do that too before a PL.
And they all received really well. All of them were received super well. So I'm like, that's even more of a fucking reason to do it,
And we do have the extras, Ricky's getting involved more, Phil, Cam, which we do got to give a shout out to them, because they've been absolutely killing it. So like with
Absolutely.
extras, we can cover news during that too. So we're going to be changing things up a little bit here on the pod. But if
Hell
you guys
yeah.
enjoyed this, smash that like button now. If you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already and you're listening to this episode, this Vince McMahon documentary review, give us a 5-star review, not just any review, a best one review, and download the episode and give us a follow. But if you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, over on the YouTube channel, lots of crazy content has been coming out over there. The Bad Blood predictions. If you haven't checked those out, check them out. If you haven't checked out the latest extra news, if you're an AEW fan like myself and Ricky, we talked about all the crazy news going on before the Bobby Lashley thing. Sure, I'll do a whole extra on that before Bad Blood. And we're going to be doing a big live watch-along, too, for WWE Bad Blood. So if you're looking for somebody to watch this insane PLE with, we will be live. We recommend you guys to hit that subscribe button now, turn on the post notifications. We're going to continue to give you guys the best content possible. The link's down in the description below. You can go follow Ben and I over on our social medias and other YouTube pages, all that down below. Ben is absolutely killing it right now on Twitch.
One would say
And
it's my
right
job
now,
now.
I've been absolutely killing it over on the Best One Donnie Toy channel. So
Yes,
if
sir.
you guys want to go support us on all of our other adventures, follow us, all the links down below. And of course, to all the We Are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide, we are taking over. Peace.
Yeah.